My son leaned over and whispered, "Don't embarrass us. Just eat," when I reached for the wrong fork. I'm Samson Brown, 62 years old, and those whispered words started the worst night of my life. Derek thought he was protecting his reputation by quietly correcting his sick, confused father at dinner. What he didn't realize was that his harsh whisper was just the beginning. Within an hour, he'd be publicly humiliating me in front of 50 strangers, calling me delusional and confused. And none of them knew that every table, every server, every brick in that restaurant belonged to me. See? I'd been hiding my terminal cancer diagnosis for 5 months. I'd also been hiding the fact that I owned an $18 million restaurant empire that Derek was about to inherit. Some conversations start with whispers and end with explosions. Some nights change everything forever. If you've ever been hurt by family, hit subscribe and tell me where you're watching from. This story might help you feel less alone. This is how one whispered insult led to the destruction of everything my son thought he knew. To understand what happened that night, you need to know how Derek saw me in those final months. 5 months earlier, Derek had watched me fumble with a fork at a family gathering. The chemotherapy had affected my fine motor control. Simple tasks had become embarrassing struggles. "Dad, here, let me help," he'd said, quickly switching my utensils to the correct positions. His tone wasn't kind, it was mortified. That was the beginning of Derek's new approach to our relationship. Damage control. The first major incident happened at his company holiday party in December. Derek worked as a marketing executive downtown, pulling a 6-figure salary he was very proud of. He'd reluctantly invited me, then spent the evening managing my interactions like I was a liability. When his boss asked what kind of work I did, Derek stepped in immediately. "My father's retired. Health issues, you know. Not my father built a business empire. Not he's a successful entrepreneur. Just health issues." When that same boss mentioned restaurant investments later, Derek physically guided me away from the conversation. "Dad doesn't really follow business anymore," he'd explained with practiced sympathy. "I own 22 restaurants generating $23.7 million annually. But Derek had decided I was too sick and confused to follow business." The second warning sign was financial. We'd had lunch at a small cafe he carefully chose, because it wasn't too fancy for my condition, and I'd left a generous tip for excellent service. Derek grabbed my wrist as we left. "Dad, $50 on a $15 meal. You can't just throw money around anymore." What Derek didn't know was that every month, I transferred $200 into his checking account. I'd been doing it for nearly 4 years. 47. Payments totaling $150–400. Money that paid his BMW lease, his downtown apartment rent, his designer clothes, the same designer clothes he wore while lecturing me about fiscal responsibility. Derek's identity had become wrapped up in being the successful one, the responsible son managing his declining father, having a parent who appeared weak, who moved slowly, who sometimes shook from medication, that fit his narrative perfectly. What destroyed me wasn't Derek's embarrassment. It was his assumption that embarrassment was justified. October 15th, 2024. That's the day Dr. Elizabeth Carter delivered my pancreatic cancer diagnosis. Stage 4, 6 months, maybe 8 with aggressive treatment. "Mr. Brown, I recommend telling your family immediately. You'll need support systems in place." But I'd made a different choice. I decided to handle my death the same way I'd handled my life, protecting Derek from unnecessary burdens while arranging his future security. The business needed succession planning. Legal documents required completion. The restaurant empire I'd built from nothing needed a smooth transition to Derek's ownership. I'd planned to tell him everything once the paperwork was finished. Hand him the keys to $18 million in assets, along with the truth about my condition. Instead, Derek spent those months cataloging my weaknesses. Every tremor became evidence of decline. Every quiet moment became proof of confusion. Every gentle correction became confirmation that he was now the adult managing the child. The irony was suffocating. Derek received more money from me monthly than most people earned in salary. Yet he saw himself as my caretaker, generously accepting my help while managing my decline. I'd spent 34 years teaching Derek about hard work, respect, and gratitude. Apparently, I'd forgotten to teach him about assumptions. But March 22nd, 2025, was about to provide that lesson in the most brutal way possible. The medical timeline was accelerating faster than expected. Dr. Carter's March 15th appointment, exactly 1 week before that disastrous dinner, had delivered sobering news. Mr. Brown, the latest scans show more aggressive progression than we'd hoped. I'm revising my estimate to 8 to 12 weeks. 8 to 12 weeks.